Amita Jairam has stopped screen share.
All right. Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the report launch event. We have gathered here online for the release of our State of Teachers, Teaching and Teacher Education Report for India 2023, titled as The Right Teacher for Every Child. So this is a biennial report brought out by the Center of Excellence of Teacher Education, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Firstly, I would like to welcome our distinguished guests, Professor Bino Paul, the Vice Chancellor, Pro-Vice Chancellor of Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mr. Sanjay Kumar, Secretary of the Department of School Education and Literacy, Ministry of Education, Government of India, the editorial team members and members of the panel who have joined us today, Professor Dinesh Saklani, Director, NCERT Chairperson, Mr. Harshit Mishra, Deputy Advisor, NITI Aayog, Professor Amita Chudgar, Michigan State University, Professor Nidhi Gulati, Institute of Home Economics, University of Delhi, Ms. Amrita Patwardhan, Head of Education, Tata Trust, Dr. Carlos Vargas, Chief of Section of Teacher Development, UNESCO, Mr. Tarun Gupta, Senior Secondary Lecturer.
Nidhi Gulati is the co-host now.
Sorry. Okay. Mr. Tarun Gupta, Senior Secondary Lecturer in a government school from Punjab. Ms. Priyanka Dubey, a private school teacher from Pune. We also specially welcome, if he's already joined, Mr. Dilip Kumar Sahu from Chhattisgarh, who is our longtime CLICS collaborator teacher, whose picture with a few children, a few of his students, is in this year's report cover page as well. So we welcome him. I'm hoping he's already joined. So I also welcome all the other distinguished invitees, faculty, staff, students, and the members of the media who are present here today with us for the event.
The culture has sent this field.
I think
it is requested from saying. Just
continue, please. Okay. Yeah, again, thank you everyone for agreeing to be part of this event today. We will start the event with the release of the report, followed by a brief presentation. We will then have a panel discussion where our panelists will share their thoughts on various themes of the report and a small Q&A session if our time permits as well. The event today is chaired by Professor Bino Paul. He is the Pro-Vice Chancellor at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, as mentioned earlier. He's also a professor at the School of Management and Labor Studies and teaches courses on labor economics, organizational economics, and so on. So we welcome you today. I would also like to wholeheartedly welcome Mr. Sanjay Kumar and thank him profusely for agreeing to release the report today. Mr. Sanjay Kumar is the Secretary of the Department of School Education and Literacy in the Ministry of Education, Government of India. He's taken the charge as a Department Secretary in the year 2022. We welcome you as well, sir. Now, I would like to now invite Professor Bino Paul to take the event forward.
Thank you. Shri Sanjay Kumar, Secretary, Ministry of Education, Government of India, Professor Padma, and all distinguished delegates, all the dear participants. A warm welcome to the report release ceremony. It's my privilege
Padmaji, namaskar. This is Sanjay here.
Sanjay Kumarji to release the report and to speak a few words.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, so let's get ahead. So let's get ahead with the procedures of the day.
Yes, sir. We've just invited you to please release the report. So we look forward to your doing that. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes. So I request my colleague Rajesh, can you? please hand over the report to be released.
So I guess consider this released. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm very glad that TIS Mumbai has come out with the right teacher for every child, State of Teachers, Teaching and Teacher Education Report for India 2023. Congratulations to TIS. And I also hope that this is going to find a fair amount of traction amongst the entire teachers fraternity. And we have one of the most complex school education system in the world, several kinds of schools, different management, but overall almost 10 million teachers. And there are issues with certain basic minimum standards of teachers. And we are all aware of the fact that a good teacher is the linchpin of the education system. Eventually, it all has to begin from the quality of teachers we have. And here at the Department of School Education and Literacy also, we are very conscious of this fact, and several steps are afoot for improvement of the quality of teachers. The foremost being that the B.Ed institutions, which otherwise used to belong to standalone kind, now they are being transformed into multidisciplinary institutions. And as of now, we are insisting that only institutions having NAAC grade A would qualify to be on board ITEP. And I feel that this is a very, very transformative and also an aspirational step, because the social prestige of the teacher also has to improve. And if the teacher is going and becoming a teacher by undergoing training at an institution which is of repute, then once you come out, then you will have a greater and better social standing in the society, which would help. And it will not only help in the teacher becoming better, but also he himself or she herself would become aspirational, and more people would want to become teachers. That is one thing. And I think also there are several other issues. For instance, once you come from a good institution and you're going to be a teacher for 30 years or 34 years, then what about your continuous professional development? And there also the NEP says that you must have 50 hours of training in a year, but then that also needs to be monitored. And we would be very happy to get suggestion as to how do we enforce this 50 hours of CPD and the kind of check and balances which needs to be there. Otherwise, I can go on to Nishtha and I can do some course and I can do a multiple choice question and I get more than 70 and I get myself certified. How effective it is for me to become a better teacher, I don't quite know. So if someone were to suggest to me that this is the way to do it, we would be very happy. So ITEP is there. And of course, we are coming out with national professional standards for teachers. We are also coming out for mentorship. So that is National Mission for Mentors. But then all these are in the stage of infancy. A policy comes out, but it also requires a fair amount of hand-holding. But the last question which I would want to leave for everyone behind is that how do I incentivize my teachers to constantly upgrade their skills? And that is extremely important. We need to work with these states. We need to tell these states that, look, if these are the service rules for teachers, then how do you incorporate good career progression in that service rule so as to incentivize teachers to do the same? So let's work on that. And we've been talking about it. And, we need to keep the morale of the teachers very high. And again, that is something which is very personal to every individual. So we need to appeal to the instinct of the person. We feel that training of teacher is extremely important. And this last year during the budget, the Honorable Finance Minister made a suggestion that every diet in the country, more than 600 of them would be developed as centers for excellence. We have picked this up under Samagra, and this year we have done more than 100 diets all across the country. And we do hope that in the next 4 to 5 years, we would upgrade each and every diet across the country as center of excellence. A lot of things are happening, but then again, we need to look at it and keep evaluating our several in steps which we are taking for making a teacher better. And we would be very happy to work with TIS. But lastly, as of now, I would congratulate TIS and the entire team for having come out with the State of Teachers, Teaching and Teacher Education report. I look forward to going through it and coming back to you if I have any questions or any interventions or any suggestions. I would suggest that let us also have a dissemination session working with the NCTE. So I'm going to ask the chairperson of NCTE to have a look at the report, and Padmaji, you may take it up with him. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for releasing the report and for your words. I would just now like to request everybody to keep your videos on for a picture, a formal screenshot of the sort for now. Yeah, all the
That's in the
panelists.
fitness of things that a picture as a screenshot is the picture.
Yes, as a
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
I hope it was taken. And thank you so much for being a part of this, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Shri Sanjay ji, for your inspiring words. I invite Professor Padma to present the report.
Thank you, Bino. Thank you, Sanjay ji, for joining us and releasing the report. And I'm really pleased that I will now present a summary of this report and its key highlights. Yeah.
This
yes.
is as a.
Akita, just move to the next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So TISS is a university with an 85-year-old history and a legacy of engagement with national development in areas of the social sector and public policy. Can you go to the previous slide, please? Yeah. The Center of Excellence in Teacher Education is an independent center at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and we are established with seed grants from the Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya scheme and the Tata Trusts. And the Tata Trusts continue with us as founding partners. The center works through teaching, advocacy, and research to raise standards and draw attention to issues that need improvement for quality of all Indian children in the education system, as well as the sector of teachers and teacher education in particular. The next slide. 2 years ago, we were invited by the UNESCO Regional Office to author the report in their series, The State of Education in India. And this report was titled No Teacher, No Class. We were delighted at the interest that was shown in this report, and we felt that a sector report is an important way to bring attention to teachers, teaching and teacher education, which are among the most key yet also the least understood aspects of quality of education. The right to education requires attention to be paid and quality to be improved in teaching and teacher education. And the NEP 2020 also lays these sectors central in its vision of reform. So we decided to bring out such a report once in 2 years to landscape the sector and also focus on themes of importance. The last report focused on COVID and the use of ICT by teachers. This report focuses on teacher availability and teacher supply. The UNESCO experience was very valuable. It showed us the value of an editorial board, and we are very grateful that leading experts of the field agreed to be on the editorial board and of the report for this year and to guide us in thinking through all the stages of this report. Dr. Saklani, Mr. Harshit Mishra, Dr. Carlos Vargas, Professor Amita Chudgar, Professor Nidhi Gulati, and Ms. Amrita Patwardhan. Their interest and enthusiasm reassured us through the journey of the last year, which has proven to be a very gigantic yet fulfilling task. We're also grateful to Jyoti Bhavne from the Indian Institute of Education, one of the authoring team, who accepted our invitation to join the team and to also anchor the field survey. And we are grateful to the secretaries and SCRT directors of 8 states who facilitated our field study: Mizoram, Assam, Bihar, Punjab, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, Telangana, and Karnataka. So on to the focus of this year's report. The report is titled The Right Teacher for Every Class. It provides an overview of teachers in India, and it dives deep into the question of whether the right teachers are available in every class. The report is a short read. It's about 32 pages long, and it has 8 sections. We give a overview of teachers in India in the first section. We then dive into the question of whether there are shortages, what kinds of shortages, and who is teaching in different classes across India. We look at gender balance in the teaching workforce. We look at working conditions of teachers with a special focus on private school teachers. We examine regional concerns, especially for the Northeast, the Himalayan states, and in rural regions. We look at teacher supply, the quality of pre-service teacher education, and whatever findings we're able to cull from the teacher eligibility test. And we end the report with key observations and recommendations. The report draws on analysis and is organized into 8 background papers. I won't read out all these background papers, but they will be available at the end of the month for any of you who's interested in the full analysis that we have undertaken. We have used the UDICE data of the Government of India. We've used the periodic labor force 2021-22 data. We conducted our own field survey covering 420 schools, 3,600 teachers, 68 teacher education institutions, 270 teacher educators, and about 1,400 student teachers. We were also able to access the TET data from one state, and we used it to analyze performance of educational institutions in teacher supply. The normative framework that we have used to guide us on thinking about the right teacher for every class, basically there are 3 ideals which we think should be reflected in teacher deployment. Firstly, ideally, the teacher workforce should have a demographic profile which is similar in terms of gender, caste, and language as the student population. It's well established that social gap affects student participation and achievement, especially as concerns marginalized communities, for girls, and for linguistic minorities. And this is a very key perspective in the equity. From an equity perspective, this is very key. The second is that different levels of school and different subject specializations require different types of teachers. The Right to Education of India recognizes the need for subject teachers in middle school and upwards. And it is also specified that schools should provide music, art, and physical education teachers. The Supreme Court in 2023 reiterated that primary school teachers in India should be appropriately qualified with DLEd or BLEd degrees, and the BEd will not do for primary school teaching. The Supreme Court in 2021 had also ruled that schools must provide special educators. So this is the second ideal that guides us on the question of the right teacher for every class. And finally, the question of pupil-teacher ratios. While national or state PTRs give us the overall picture of teacher availability, the Right to Education specifies that PTR should be calculated at the school level. And it also mandates that no matter how small, a school must have at least 2 teachers, effectively saying that there should not be single teacher schools. Now, teacher availability to meet all these requirements is a function, on the one hand, of the overall supply from pre-service teacher education institutions and the choices and the aspirations that students have. And on the other side, it's dependent on timely recruitment, conducive recruitment terms, and working conditions, both in the government and in the private sector. Now, with this background in mind, I will present you some of the key highlights of this year's report. As Mr. Sanjay Kumar pointed out, ours is a huge teacher workforce. We're among the largest in the world with 9.2 million teachers. About 70% of all our teachers are in rural schools. The private sector is a rather big employer of teachers in India, with 37% of teachers. In other words, for every 10 teachers in the government school sector, we have 7.5 teachers in the private school sector. The private school workforce grew by 2.5% from our last report to this year's report. Women constitute about 51% of the total workforce, but there are very marked differences sector-wise, level-wise, and subject-wise, and also between states. Only about 40% of rural teachers in India are women. The private sector, on the other hand, is mostly feminized. 73% of private schools in urban areas are basically women teachers. We also find that the younger teacher workforce, both in government and in private schools, is mainly women. In other words, there seems to be a distinct feminization in new cohorts entering into the profession. We find that the representation of women in physical education is very low. The representation of scheduled caste women teachers is very low. And the overall representation of women in leadership positions in schools is very low. For example, although the private school sector, in our survey, 71% of the teachers were women, only 37% of school heads of private schools were women. The mean age, we find about 2.5% of persons with disabilities are a part of the teacher workforce in India. The median age of teachers is about 38 years. We find that the rural women teachers are the youngest in this cohort with a median age of about 32, and government school teachers in urban areas, the median age is about 44. We also find that in the next 5 years, about 15% of the workforce will need to be replaced. And subsequent to that, about 10% every 5 years will need to be replaced. We're also finding that the students entering into pre-service teacher education, a very large percentage constituted by women. The next slide, please. Yeah. So now to the question of providing the right teacher in every class. The overall national level of the PTR looks reasonable at 28:1, but the interstate differences are huge. The northeastern and Himalayan states have very low PTRs, 6:1 in Ladakh, for example. And in Bihar, the PTR is extremely high at 53:1. Very likely, this is indicative in the Himalayan states of difficult terrains and very small schools. And Bihar, probably a case of lower teacher availability and also delays in recruitment. About 90% of teachers have some form of professional qualification. But when we look at the question of appropriate professional qualification, which was flagged by the Supreme Court, only 46% of teachers in primary school have the appropriate qualification. The remaining, another 30% have BA degrees. In our survey, we found that about 70% of middle school secondary teachers are teaching the subject in which they have the relevant undergraduate specialization. So that's reasonably good. Only about 30% of teachers, there are mismatches. But these mismatches vary hugely across subject area. And the maximum being in mathematics, where 50% of people teaching mathematics did not have any undergraduate degree in mathematics. And this is followed by areas such as science and English. In government schools, we found that there was grossly insufficient teachers for physical education, art, and music. And overall in the system, there are insufficient special educators. When asked about teacher requirements, 62% of government schools and 32% of private schools reported that they had teacher requirements and even furnished us with numbers of how many teachers they actually needed. So we do regard this data point as fairly reliable. We looked at working conditions of teachers. This is very important. Teacher motivation, desire to join the profession is influenced by working conditions that are available. We find that the NEP rightly draws attention to this. Between our last report and this one, we found that basic amenities are improving overall, but still only about 58% of rural schools have all classrooms in good conditions. And only 42% of private schools have ramps for special needs. Professional working conditions in private schools are better than those in government schools. Teachers report having more staff support. They have librarians and other kinds of staff available in school. And they also report having much less administrative work compared to teachers in the government school. The government school teachers, on the other hand, report a high level of having multi-grade classrooms to teach. And they also face difficulties in terms of student attendance and more substitution periods. 40% of teachers in both government and private schools feel that they don't have any control over their curriculum. With regards to employment terms of teachers, the teachers in the private school sector have very unfavorable employment conditions. About 50% are working without written contracts. From teachers who have long contracts in the private sector, they receive about 60% of the average government teacher salary. But overall, it's about 35 to 40% of a government teacher salary. And many teachers even reported receiving less than 10,000 rupees a month. 57% of private school teachers are not eligible for any kind of benefit, and only 27% of early childhood educators receive some kind of health benefits. Considering that teaching employment in the private school sector is significant, more attention needs to be paid to employment terms in this sector. And the question of receiving health and other benefits is important to secure a profession which involves frontline work. We looked at teacher supply, analyzing data from one state's teacher eligibility test, and this proved to be an extremely important exercise. I have been an advocate of retaining pre-service teacher education and diets, and so it is enormously satisfying for me to report that based on the analysis of TED data from this state, the diets and the IAC stand out in terms of both efficiency and quality. While only about 31% of applicants from the self-finance colleges qualified in the TET, it was 59% of students from diets qualifying in the TET. All diets were able to put at least 50% of their students through the TET. In comparison, only 7% of the self-finance colleges succeeded in putting more than 50% of their students through the TET. The average marks obtained by students from the diets was 57% in the TET, while that of the self-finance colleges was just 51%, and this is of qualifying candidates. The same picture was found even in the case of the B.Ed colleges. The IASCs, which are the government-funded institutions, and the aided institutions outperformed the self-finance colleges, even in the secondary school sector. However, the overall low scores of DL.Ed students and social science teachers is a matter of concern. And overall mathematics performance of DL.Ed students is also a concern. They were scoring only about 40% on the mathematics component of the test. The situation of teacher preparation for areas such as art, music, and physical education are also a matter of concern, mostly because of the lack of adequate institutions to develop teachers of this kind. Physical education seems to be doing a little better, mainly because of the growth of the fitness industry in the country. Availability of teacher preparation for special education is very uneven in the country. Especially in the Northeast, we don't even find institutions preparing special educators. We also found that between 15 to 30% of candidates in the PSTE are shifting careers into teaching. This means that an older cohort of students is entering into the profession as a second choice. We think that this has value because these are people who are bringing in maturity and life experience into the classroom, and policy needs to recognize this, value it, and respond to it in innovations to strengthen quality and supply of teachers. So I will end with a call for action that has been articulated in this report. Firstly, ensure that primary school stage has appropriately qualified teachers. More investment is needed to improve supply in art, music, and special education. And special attention needs to be paid to enhancing employment opportunities and employment terms of the sector. The employment terms and recruitment of physical education, art, music, and special education teachers in the system needs improvement. Teacher availability and deployment in rural areas and Northeast needs improvement. Attention needs to be paid to basic amenities and improved working conditions, and also perhaps incentives to draw teachers to work in these difficult to staff areas. The employment terms of teachers in the private schools needs regulation. We need to ensure provision of benefits to all teachers in private schools and in the early childhood and care sector. All teachers need improved health benefits. The professional working conditions of government school teachers needs improvement. The quality of the PSTE, the pre-service teacher education curriculum, overall needs improvement, both for rigor as well as attention to subject knowledge competence. Given that more mature students are entering into the profession, we need to create innovative new pathways to enter into the profession at later stages. And therefore, the 2-year B.Ed with a range of specializations needs to be strengthened, also to enable teachers wanting to shift stage in which they teach. There is need for increased government funding and support to teacher education overall, and to the primary and preparatory sector of teacher education in particular. Innovation and scholarships are needed to enhance enrollment of women from the ST communities into teacher education, for women to join physical education, teacher education, and enhancing the enrollment of men in special education. We also need to increase the supply and monitor deployment of mathematics, science, and English teachers. We need to use data from the TET and from admissions and success in these programs to monitor the trends most closely. Thank you. This was a brief summary of the report. It's now available for all of you to download using this QR code, and we welcome your comments and feedback on this report.
Thank you. This is also just to give out information on the available courses at the Center and Tata Institute of Social Sciences. I will now stop sharing. And thank you so much, Professor Sarangapani, for sharing the insights from the report. The report QR code is now available on the screen and can be accessed by everyone as well. We'll now move to the panel discussion, and I would like to introduce our esteemed panel for the day. Dr. Carlos Thames is the Chief of Section of Teacher Development at UNESCO. He is a sociologist of education who specializes in global education policy. His research and publications focus on the relationship between education, human rights, and well-being. We also have in the panel Professor Nidhi Gulati, who is a professor at Institute of Home Economics, University of Delhi. She has about 19 years of experience in teaching and research, and her research interests areas include childhood, teachers and teaching, teacher education, elementary education, culture studies, and so on. We have Professor Amita Chudgar, who is a professor at Michigan State University. She is a professor of education policy. Her work examines the influence of home, school, and community contexts on educational access and achievement of children in resource-constrained environments. We also have with us two school teachers, one of which is Ms. Priyanka Dubey, who is a school teacher working in a private school in Pune. She holds about 20 years of teaching experience. She has worked as a teacher educator in B.Ed colleges and as a school teacher in both government and private schools in rural areas. And she also comes with diverse and multi-layered experience in teaching. We have with us in the panel Mr. Tarun Dubey, who is a senior secondary lecturer who is posted at the government co-ed senior secondary school in Patiala district, Punjab. He too brings with him about 8 years of teaching experience. Thank you for joining this panel today. And just a quick note to everyone. If you have any questions, please put it on the chat and we will address it post this. Or for people who are watching it on YouTube live, please put it on your comments and we're able to pick it up from there. I would like to now invite Professor Paul to initiate the panel discussion. We also invite all of you to share your, as mentioned, your questions in the chat box.
Thank you. Foremost, congratulate Professor Padma and team for bringing out this wonderful report. It's really insightful. And now I invite Dr. Carlos. Over to Dr. Carlos.
Thank you very much, Professor. And please let me begin with a warm congratulatory message to Padma's team, to the Center for Excellence in Teacher Education at TIS and the Tata Institute. I believe that the data that has been presented pretty much reflects and mirrors some of the global concerns that we have been documenting. My comments will draw on the one hand, of course, on the report that's been presented today, but it's also based, as Padma presented, in work that we did together for the State of Education report of India, which focused on teachers, also led by the UNESCO office in New Delhi and the Ministry of Education, together with Padma and her team, and which already gave us a glance of what are the challenges in terms of teacher availability, teacher education, as was presented as well by the Secretary at the introductory remarks. I will also draw from a global report on teachers, the first ever to be published by UNESCO and the International Task Force on Teachers for Education 2030. I will be sharing with you some of the highlights in the chat, so you might be able to access that. Of course, we were very happy to count with one background paper on the Indian case by Padma and the team, so we're very happy to also reference that. Maybe let me start by sharing some of the global challenges when it comes to the teachers that are needed to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal for education. As you have probably heard, and you will see, there's a shortage of some 44 million teachers to achieve universal primary and secondary education globally. And that shortage, of course, has different distributions, particularly when it comes to world regions. We know there is a shortage of teachers, the largest one in sub-Saharan Africa with some 15 million, but this region in particular, I mean, I'm talking about Southern Asia, has reported improvements, especially due to substantial teacher recruitment in secondary education, the slowing of population growth. Some of the analysis and the data that are provided in the report that we're presenting today attests to that. However, the region still has the second greatest need in terms of teachers. Some 7.8 million teachers need to be recruited in the region to achieve SDG 4. Now, we all know, and I think the report does a good job in presenting what are some of the challenges for that teacher gap to be filled, and also what are some of the causes for these teacher shortages. And I'm very happy to share with you some of the analysis that we've done in terms of those shortages. We know there's demographic changes. We know there's a growth in student populations that puts pressure on education systems. But we also know, and this is a global trend, that teacher attrition has doubled from 2015 to 2022. So basically, we know that teachers are actually leaving the profession in great numbers. And I believe that the data presented in the study is very helpful to exemplify some of the reason for the teacher shortages. On the one hand, it has to do with uncompetitive salaries. We know some 50% of all countries in the world pay primary teachers less than other professions that require similar qualifications. This is, of course, quite a concern in making the profession attractive, in keeping the profession attractive. But I would say behind the rates of teacher attrition, behind the global shortages of teachers, we find different elements. One of them, as we said, has to do with the working conditions of teachers, but the working conditions have both material and symbolic dimensions. On the material, we know teacher salaries are very important, so are workloads and the material working conditions in terms of the access to the right educational resources, the infrastructures of schools, and so on and so forth. But we also know there is a symbolic condition to attrition, and that has to do with the trust that we confer teachers to do their work. To what extent is there confidence in the work of teachers, and that teachers can actually make educational decisions not only in the classroom, which is pretty much the job of a teacher, but also in the school system and at the policy level. So we have been promoting from UNESCO, of course, a more prominent role of teachers to play in educational decision making, and that begins with trusting the work that they do. I echo the words of Padma when it comes to the control that teachers have over curriculum as one of these causes, the issue of autonomy, of agency, of teachers to be able to fully deploy their potential has an effect in how attractive the profession remains or not. So I believe that the report brings important data as well, which mirrors the global data, particularly on what are some of the causes for shortages, but also how shortages vary. On the one hand, from region to region. Secondly, whether it's rural or urban areas that are addressed. Padma in her presentation also made reference to this, to the case system in particular, also to the different areas where teachers might be deployed. So important to mention, and I think it is a global challenge. We do see a coexisting feminization of the teaching profession and an underrepresentation of women in different areas and in different positions, particularly those of leadership. So we're very happy to see more nuanced information as to these challenges. We know the feminization of the teaching profession sits on gender biases, on stereotypical views of the responsibility of the care and education of children. There's no wonder then that in early childhood education and care, most of the teaching workforce is actually women. But as we move up the ladder into higher education levels, into particular areas here, STEM is quite a concern. We do see an underrepresentation of women, and that is something that needs to be addressed. It has implications as well in terms of who chooses to become a teacher, in terms of role models, even in some world regions, in terms of disengagement, for example, of boys from education who do not see education or teaching as an attractive profession. Now, there is a concern, of course, of how attractive the profession is, as we said, because of material working conditions, but also the symbolic. How do we make teaching an intellectually attractive profession? And how do we keep the motivation and therefore retention of teachers in the classroom when we tell teachers what to do, when to do it, how to do it? We inspect them so that they do it, we test them so that they do it, and then we require teacher innovation, which is a contradiction in terms. So what I would say is that one of the key recommendations that has to do with the shortages and has to do with the big chapter that is actually done on the data on teacher professional development is that it is actually balanced to mirror the diversity of the communities that teachers actually serve. So I would say that is one of the key recommendations that we make in the global report on teachers that UNESCO will be launching, but also that teachers actually participate in educational decision making. That has implications in terms of the teacher education and professional development, in the mechanisms for participation, for social dialogue that there might be, so that teachers can participate and shape the profession, not only in terms of teacher well-being, their remuneration, their work-life balance, but as we said, bringing into the forth the knowledge that teachers actually produce in the classroom, and that can be useful for them, for their peers, and for education systems. This implies transforming initial teacher education and continuous professional development from a course-based, individual, credit-based endeavor to a more relational, lifelong, and life-wide process, one in which professional development might be led by teachers at different levels, from the novice to the expert to the mentors, and that actually brings more trust and more respect for the profession. As we said, one of the key recommendations of our report has to do with the role of agency and autonomy for teachers to actually shape the profession. And finally, just to mention that the recognition, the appreciation, the feedback mechanisms that we have for teachers, including different forms of assessment, of teacher appraisal, that might be more consistent of the work that they do, that might be more helpful and less punitive in terms of the career pathways, is important. One key recommendation certainly has to do with this possibility of teachers to move vertically or horizontally across the profession. On the one hand, we know that teachers choose teaching out of a vocation, out of a calling, but that there are also possibilities for teachers to participate as mentors, as teacher educators, as teacher trainers, as school leaders. But this can only happen if careers are structured in a way that meritocracy and that expertise can actually be leveraged. So in that respect, in order to make the profession more attractive, to keep teachers in the profession, we need to find the right courses for mobility of teachers, not only in terms of remuneration and experience, but also in terms of the tasks that they can actually do. That is also an important message that we have coming out in the global report on teachers. So just to finalize, I'm very happy to see that the report that is presented today actually brings more nuanced data of what that means in a particular territory. What are some of the realities in terms of the shortages? The report also makes a point in terms of the data that is needed for this actually, calculations in terms of the shortages of the qualified teachers, of the deployment strategies, so that we know actually who the teachers.
Dr. Carlos, we overshot the time.
Yeah, I'm wrapping up. Thank you. So I was just going to say that the report, I just wanted to commend the report for these examples and these nuanced data that we need of who the teachers are, where they are, what they need, and what they can support in this CEST for teacher education transformation. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Carlos. I invite Professor Nidhi.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Bino. So what I'm going to do now is take you back to the report and have a fleeting glance at some of the findings specifically about the pre-service teacher education sector and give insight into the aspect that speaks to me most because I'm a teacher educator and student teachers. Padma has already shared the TET aspect, so I will not go back into it. And two problematizations I will select and figure out that what are the ways in which India can find some answers in policy, can find some answers to those problems of teacher supply, specifically for art education and special education. So teacher education has been a black box for us, even though we all talk about it, write about it, publish on it, think about it, make teachers lament about it. But there are many invisible aspects of teacher education sector, which are very, very important to understand and derive insights from. And this is what the study actually does. It brings alive the profile of the teachers of all the actors in the teacher education system. And across the selected states, it tells us who a teacher educator is, what is her social profile, what has been her training, what are her aspirations, what are her competencies, what are her service conditions. Is a teacher educator happy being a teacher educator? What is her vision of taking the sector forward or moving ahead? So the study per se brings in empirical evidence, and that is the strength of the study. So let's just begin with data from the 269 teacher educators who participated in the teacher educators survey for the study. And I'm quoting from the report, I'm drawing from the report. Overall, 6 out of every 10 teacher educators are likely to be women. But in the government institutions, 6 out of every 10 teacher educators are likely to be men, which again takes us back to the point of feminization, the point that Carlos was also making, that even though at the lower rungs or in private jobs, we have more women, but where there are stable working conditions, where there is job security, men enter the profession more. 6 out of every 10 teacher educators are likely to be working in an urban area. There are state-wise variations. Nearly 6 out of 10 work in private teacher education institutions and 4 work in government. Teacher educators are primarily general caste. They are not drawn. So 5.5 out of every 10 are primarily from general caste. One northeastern state, Punjab, 8 out of every 10 are general caste. This increases the social distance between the student teacher and the teacher educator. And this further creates problems which kind of spiral off into other problems. In private teacher education institutions, which make up 93% of the sector, general category teacher educators are maximum. 7 out of every 10 teacher educators are between 31 and 50 years of age. So it is a middle-aged population, mostly women in private institutions, mostly urban. 65% of them have postgraduate degrees. So a faculty who is teaching in a government or an aided teacher education institution, she is most likely to have a professional degree also, which is an MEd, Masters in Education. Half of them are likely to have a PhD, a doctorate. More than half of them are likely to have cleared the NET exam or the SLET exam. And teacher educators with higher qualifications are employed mostly in government institutions. So as compared to the study sample, to the private teacher educations in the study sample. So we come to the working conditions. We figure out that most of them, about 65% of them, they have permanent employment contracts. So there is a stableness to their nature of employment. A rural teacher educator is more likely, 7 out of every 10 teacher educators are more likely to have permanent appointment than urban teacher educators. A man is likely to have a more permanent appointment than female teacher educators. So rural men most likely to have permanent appointments, and it is most likely that this person is employed in a government or a government-aided institution. This does tell us that their working conditions are better, at least the material working conditions, as Carlos tells us, they are better. And in terms of ensuring quality of teaching, learning, this is an important aspect of teacher education sector. 74% of them, which is an important figure, earn less than 50,000 Indian rupees a month or 600 USD a month. Rural teacher educators and women are likely to be paid much, much lesser. Private teacher education institutions are likely to be poor paymasters. Now we come to the two problematizations which were mentioned in the data, which were we have about only 2% or 3% of music and arts student teachers who are training to be teachers. Only 2% student teachers who are training to be special educators. Now, these are very tricky things because there is a demand, but there is no supply. The art teacher may be a trained artist, but none of the 4-year degree programs which we have the Indra Kala Sangeet Vishwavidyalaya in Chhattisgarh, we have Bharat Bhavan, we have multiple art centers, but none of them have dance, drama, music, fine arts, or trains teachers in pedagogical methods or issues. So in call for action, I would suggest that we add that at least 1 year or 6-month seminar-based, workshop-based training for these 4-year diploma holders in BPA, BFA, B vocational, be there. We have a model for this, Padma. The model is the NSD Theatre and Education Repertory Company, which is an exemplar of the structure. It has 4 centers across the country. We also need to develop a 1-year course, and we need to focus more on arts, artisans in residence, arts in residence. For special education, there is a particular kind of issue. For special education, we have a specialized training. So the country trains a special educator to be a learning disability kind of a special teacher, a special educator. Whereas, last.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So what we need here is that we shift this single disability training to a multiple disability training, because each school, each teacher needs to be trained to have an ability to respond to different disabilities in the classroom. Also, there are issues with the RCI and RCI recognition and regulation, which needs to be in tandem with the PWD Act. And I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Nidhi. I invite Professor Amita.
Thank you, Professor Paul. I'll try and keep an eye on time. Good evening, colleagues. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. I want to congratulate Professor Padma Sarangapani and the team, Jyoti Bhavane, Kamlesh Goyal, Maithili Ramchand, Aishwarya Ratish, Anita, and Arpita for this wonderful work that you have led as researchers and the research support team, the whole kind of machinery that has worked with you for this really important work. I'm very happy to be here. As I was thinking about my remarks for this report, I find this to be an incredibly important contribution in the broader conversations around teacher labor market issues. Thinking about questions, as we have heard through the conversations so far, about questions of both the demand for teachers, what are the shortages, what do we need, as we have heard from Dr. Carlos, from Professor Nidhi, what are the needs, where are the demands? And here, for example, we see that we need more secondary teachers. We need more math and science teachers, more special education teachers. Understanding these questions of where is the demand, where is the system in need. And this report brings together really important insights on the supply. Where are the teachers available? Where are they willing to work? Because teachers, like all of us, make decisions about where is desirable and appropriate for them to offer their services and their labors, which causes a lot of interesting sort of dynamics to come when the demand and the supply side are studied and understood together. It gives us very crucial insights on the broader teacher labor market. And what I want to commend this report for doing is allowing us this glimpse into this complex teacher labor market in the case of India with 9.5 million teachers. The knowledge this report is generating is incredibly valuable as we consider the implications of what it means when we look at these demands that we have and the supply conditions, and when they come together, what implications can we draw from it? A number of years ago, with a very dear colleague of mine, Professor Thomas Lushai, also a professor here in the United States, we worked on a series of studies for UNICEF, where we were looking at similar questions about teacher distributions across the world. And we found things, as several of you have acknowledged, which are similar across the world, as this report also shows. What we tended to see that when we consider the demand and supply together, we saw serious distributional concerns of educational equality. We saw consistently, as we see in this report, that teachers who are more trained, more qualified, more experienced, tend to disproportionately be teaching children who are in more marginalized circumstances. And in this report, for example, we see this to be the case where rural teachers tend to be younger, less experienced. And interestingly, the issue of feminization that many have brought up, we saw this across the world, and we see it again in this report, that rural teachers we found were disproportionately more male and less female. And all of these pieces have very important implications for issues that we have heard already. Just to take one example, if we think about how most education systems value experience and training as a way to get higher salary. So when a more experienced and a more trained teacher is teaching in an urban area, it is not just that the urban child has access to a more seasoned teacher or a more trained teacher, but it's also that more financial resources through teacher salary are being now allocated towards these areas compared to rural areas, for example, where there might be greater need and children might need more support from their teachers. There are other important implications of this issue of distributional challenges, which again, I really commend this report for drawing our attention to, is that when we have seen this in our previous work, and this report again brings our attention to this, that some of these dynamics of demand and supply often create sort of what we thought was a revolving door, where teachers in the most marginalized circumstances as soon as they gather enough experience or enough, they move away from those positions. And we right now see in the report that this is a tendency in the private sector where teachers come in, but they don't stay, they move away. And this creates an implication for the learning experiences that students enjoy or fail to enjoy when there is no stability in the teachers that their schools get to retain. This has very important implications for issues of role models, which again, I think Carlos brought up. When, for example, girls don't get to have female role models for them, or boys, vice versa, as the profession becomes more feminized. So again, I really highly commend this report for bringing together these separate pieces and working on this really important sector report that is allowing us to create this bigger picture. This also has very important implications for issues of teacher training, which has come up in our conversations and in previous speakers' comments, because this draws our attention to what kind of training and support our teachers really need. You know, Mr. Sanjay mentioned the importance of continuous professional development, and this draws our attention to the kinds of CPD that is necessary for teachers teaching in particularly challenging environments who might be younger and less experienced to begin with. If just to conclude, and I'm mindful of time, I think I have a minute or so left. I guess I would like to draw attention to a couple of other sort of threads which I think the report brings to our attention and which I think are very compelling. One is this issue of the feminization of teaching profession is very compelling that the report draws our attention to, and something that certainly deserves much more thinking, as several have pointed out, that professions often tend to, unfortunately across the world, we have seen that the loss of prestige, the loss of, financial remuneration, and how do we sort of think through these implications as teaching does become more feminized, as is the trend, or across the world, in India as well. I also want to bring attention to, and Dr. Nidhi talked about this in some detail as well, the very important piece of teacher education and teacher training. And again, I commend the report for the TET data analysis, which compellingly draws our attention to the challenge of quality of teacher education in self-financed private schools. And given that they are 93 or 97%, 93% of the whole teacher training apparatus, that requires a great deal of attention. And the issue of working conditions or employment conditions of private teachers is also something that this report highlights, and which is extremely important, given that private sector is now employing millions of teachers in the country. And I commend the report for highlighting that. And I wanted to also underscore that. And my final plea would be, as the report notes, more data is always helpful to illuminate these questions. So I join the report in requesting the same. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Amita. I invite Ms. Priyanka. No, so you're on mute. Can you mute?
Extremely sorry, Mike. Am I audible now?
Oh yes, audible.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your valuable inputs. I'm a teacher in an unaided private school in Pune, and when Carlos pointed out the symbolic and material dimensions, I really closely connected to it, and it is a privilege to be a part of this event. The report on Right Teacher for Every Child 2023 is indeed a stepping stone in building strong and firm foundation collectively, I think, for all the stakeholders in the all stakeholders of education. The contents of the report resonate very well with the theme of the report, and the different points are very well highlighted. And as a teacher, I can connect well with it, both as a member of teacher fraternity and also as an individual of the unaided private school. Now here I would like to present a few points which the report talks about. The very first point is about the salaries and other benefits of private sector schools. So the salary structure in all the private schools have disparity, and I think everyone will agree to it. In my personal experience, my school pays salary as per the government norms and regulations, and also provide free education to the wards of the teachers. Here also the provision of ad hoc teachers are there, but then their salary is also best in the industry. But that is not the case of my fellow friends who are kind of teaching in private sectors, and they have reported that the salaries are as less as 10,000 rupees, be it on any level. Another crucial point here is that why teachers join private schools despite low salary, and even if there are no or less benefits and there are no written proper contract. So the simple reason what I feel is that jobs in government schools are few and hiring process is long. Options also in the reputed schools are limited. And as the report mentions that family and distance constraint result in a situation where teachers compromise, and especially the point of feminization is also highlighted over here. Now, the situation turned really bad during COVID-19 in the private sectors, where many teachers in private schools lost their jobs and were not even paid for the work done. Again, I count myself fortunate enough because in my school, all teachers along with the support staff received full salaries and benefits during COVID times. Now, other point which Professor Padma presented that about the degrees and qualification and eligibility criteria. So eligibility criteria. So here in private school, they prefer B.Ed primarily because it gives them more flexibility to rotate teachers, and it makes them easier and for the concerned authorities to fill in vacancy internally, and they can move them vertically or horizontally the way they want. However, a downside commonly seen is in the salary structure being less defined, with teachers who move to higher classes also ending up drawing salaries of primary teachers. So these are all the inputs which I wanted to share, which are related to private sector teaching. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Priyanka. Now I invite Tarun.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. I'm a teacher currently teaching at Government School NTC Rajpura. First of all, I'm honored to be a part of launch of the this report, Right Teacher for Every Child by TIS Mumbai. Firstly, the title of the report, The Right Teacher for Every Child, took me back to my school days, where I was fortunate enough to have met a teacher for whom teaching was not a profession but passion. And secondly, it raised a question in my mind regarding the secondly, it raised a question in my mind regarding the teacher availability or availability of right teachers in today's scenario. My reflection on the report will be limited to government schools, as I have been teaching in government schools since 2016. Specifically speaking on the issue of feminization of teaching, the report has captured the issue very well. I have also witnessed the same in my school and in the surrounding schools too. In my school, out of 70 teachers, majority of the teachers are female. On the contrary, one exception is also observed, that there is one area where male teachers are in majority, and that area is physical education. And I think this is a very valid point noted in the report. Another well-raised point in the report is regarding the subject teacher availability, which needs to be focused more at school level. In various government schools, social science teachers were many times asked to teach language and science teachers were also asked to teach the subject in which they do not have any required qualifications. For example, in my school, there is a lack of teacher in commerce stream, due to which master cadre teachers are teaching the commerce students. Further, I would like to reflect on the availability of special education teachers in schools. In schools, we have students with special needs, and to deal and teach them better, we do not have right skills or qualification, and we do not have special education teacher in our schools. And that is also very well noted in the report. I feel this concern needs special attention. Last but not the least, I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to read and reflect on this report. My heartiest congratulations to the entire team, and thank you for having me on the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Tarun, for your remarks. We have maybe 2-3 minutes for question and answers. Can you have 2 questions, 3 questions? 2 to 3 questions we can have. Any questions, please? Any reflections?
Anybody who has a question would like to post on the chat box so that we can pick it up.
Okay. Sure. So, thank you. This has been a wonderful session. And I would take just maybe a couple of minutes, I'll take. I would like to connect with my auto ethnographic account. I completed my 10th in 1988. I had a vernacular schooling in Malayalam medium. But I'm telling you the hard fact. My class, there were 40 students, out of which only 5 could accomplish graduate and above. Out of 40, only 2 could attain formal job. One is me. And I know what are the occupations rest of the students are in. Most of them are in either self-employment or casual employment. But we were taught by teachers who are in the formal sector. So one hand, undoubtedly, we should need more investment on decent job creation and education. The other hand, we need more accountability. But this happened long ago. But contemporary times, I'm sure there are changes. But I think ground level, some of these challenges remain. I think why I looked at why there was no transition among our batchmates to higher education. I looked at one reason was we had something called +2 or pre-degree prior to the degree course. I did it in Calicut University. The pass rate was just 3 out of 3, 1. I think all my classmates failed in English, only in English. So I think, have we changed much? We have to really see that. I recall, if you see the census, the current census is not out yet, unfortunately, 2011 census. In districts like Malkangiri, Odisha, in the age group of 15 to 34, not literates, the proportion of not literates was nearly half. 10 years back, it was out of 3, 2. But I think this report will herald, ushering new forces and energies to transform. Thank you for your insights. It has been a tremendous learning. Thank you.
Okay, since we have just one question on the chat box, just want to request Professor Bino if you could take that up. The question reads out like this: if a teacher is hired through a government conducted exam and have the required degree, but still we require them to train, does it reflect there is lack on the part of education system? Why the teachers are lacking despite hired through a process? All right. I think, all right. So we'll then maybe respond to the question later since we have run out of time. Lastly, I would like to thank really everybody for being part of this event and making it a success for us. The report is now available in our center's website and can be accessed through the QR code. Can the QR code be, and the link as well? The link is put on the chat box. Please do access it, and hope you all enjoy reading the report. And as much as we have enjoyed working on it, you all enjoy reading it as well. Thank you once again for coming in, and yeah, good evening and good afternoon.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carlos.
Congratulations.
Amita, Nidhi,
Thank
Tarun,
you.
Priyanka. Thank you, Bino.
Thank you.